My name is James Ferreira, and I was a bass angler before, and I loved it. I live on a small urban lake, and I fish every single day, and I was throwing jigs and chatterbaits and spinnerbaits and everything else, and it just, to me, numbers of fish never really did anything for me. And I had a buddy who was an angler, and he goes out for stripers, and he throws big, giant swim baits. So he took me out one time, and we went fishing for striper, and I was throwing a depths 250, and I brought along my bass rods, and he just kind of laughed at me, and he handed me a swim bait rod and a round reel and a depths 250. Well, this isn't a depths 250, but he handed me a big glide bait, and he said, "All right, let's throw these for the day." I said, "Okay." And after that day, man, I was kind of hooked on the big bait idea. To me, throwing a big bait it's not only going for the trophy fish in the lake, it's going for the biggest fish on any body of water, but you're also going to get small fish too. Bass is opportunistic, and they see a big meal and they're going to grab it, whether it's 2 pounds or 12 pounds, you know. So to me, sometimes you don't always get the numbers, but you put in a lot of hard work, and I think that's what appeals to me about swim baiting, is it's a little more dedication, and it's not for your fair weather angler, you know what I mean? If you're gonna dedicate yourself to throwing big baits day in and day out and get rid of your traditional gear, it's definitely gonna be a grind some days, but in the end, when you get that double-digit bass, or maybe you catch the biggest bass, swim baiting definitely takes a little more dedication. It is hard to sit out there day in and day out. I had somebody ask me about coming to Bienville with all my big swim baits, and they said, "What if you don't catch a fish? What if you throw those things and you don't catch a fish?" And I told them, well, then I don't catch a fish. Throwing a worm is an insurance that you're gonna go catch a bass, and throwing these doesn't always mean you're gonna catch a fish either. So I love throwing big baits because it's a little more dedication. It's a lot more methodical. You've really got to read your layout. You got to read what's in front of you, and you got to put this big giant bait where that big giant fish is, and hopefully he bites it. So a lot of times people might be a little bit intimidated about the bigger baits. They don't really know how to throw them, or they think you can only throw them deep over points or this or that. But I've got a couple baits here that are super versatile and are kind of attacking all sections of the water column for me today. So this is a Rago Baits soft plastic. It's a big giant hunk of plastic, but it's a weightless alpha trout. So that means weightless, it definitely weighs something. This comes in at around 10 ounces. Weightless just means it's a big solid bodied plastic bait with no internal weights on it. So your hooks that you set up on the bottom, because it's a line through bait, those are actually your weighting system. So what this bait does, this does one of three things. It's a wake bait on the top of the water, and this tail just wags and the dorsal sticks out, and you just get a really nice subtle wake to it. Or with 2 hooks on the bottom, it really, really slowly sinks over grass beds and grass flats and stuff like that, and you can just slow roll it right over the top. So, you know, just barely topped out grass, you know, maybe the grass is 3 feet below the surface and you want to cover that area. This sinks down right over the top, and it just pops right over the top of it. Now you can add weights to this. You could put nail weights down the ballast of the bait, and then that would make it a slow sink bait. Now this is, you guys, you know, that throw smaller paddle tails and stuff like that, that's all this is. This is the 7.5-inch Rago hot hitch, and it's a little beat up, it's a little worse for wear, it's got some fish on it, but this is running a 10-aught owner beast hook, and it's got a slot on the top, and it's got a slotted belly. So this is essentially, you can run it hook out if you're not in heavy cover, you know what I mean, if you're not in heavy grass or anything like that, or you can slide it down a little bit and you just barely skin hook it, and this thing will come through the thickest of cover. And it's even got a little, these new owner beast hooks have a little underspin on the bottom, so it gives a little extra flash. So I'll throw this right on hard grass lines, over grass. I'll pitch it in the slop just like I would a frog, and kind of just drag it across the top, and then as soon as it hits that hard edge, it'll fall straight nose down, and a lot of times they'll come out from underneath the grass and smash it, or they'll come up through the top just like they would a frog. And then on a little more open cover, you know, not as much grass, or maybe the grass is a little bit deeper. This is a glide bait. This is a depth bull shooter 190, so it's 190 millimeters. I think it weighs in at around 6 ounces. And obviously it's a treble hook bait, so you're not gonna be able to fish it in that heavy a cover. But this has got a really subtle kind of glide motion to it, back and forth, and it's a slow sink model. So you throw it out there and it very slowly sinks, about 1.5 feet a second, something like that. And it's just a slow, steady retrieve with the occasional pop, and you can make this thing just dance in the water back and forth. You can make it 180 on itself. You can make it stall out and just sit there and slowly, slowly sink. And a lot of times they'll hit it on the pause. So even though these are big baits, you can look at them just like regular tackle. You can attack top water, middle, and bottom if you know what you're looking for. So